When people hear that someone loses 99 pounds in 5 months, they usually assume starvation, endless salads, or some extreme plan that destroys your metabolism. But what Brian actually ate and why he chose that approach surprised almost everyone, including people who were trying to lose weight themselves. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how Brian ate with my guidance, and more importantly, why it worked for him. I got a lot of questions about Brian's process, not just about what he ate, but what his workouts looked like, what supplements he took, whether he ate the same way after losing weight, and how he actually kept it off. If I answered all of that in one video, it would be way too long. So this is part one of a series focused entirely on the nutrition strategy. Before we go any further, I want to be clear that you should not blindly copy this diet and assume it will work for you. This was designed specifically for Brian, based on his body, his preferences, and his medical context. Always consult a medical professional before making any changes to your diet. Brian came to me weighing 320 pounds after seeing one of my other clients, Dwayne's transformation, and wanted similar results for himself. At the time, Brian had high blood sugar, a large amount of belly fat, very low energy, and he was completely fed up with how he felt. So I got to work. The first thing I do with any client is determine their food preferences, what they realistically enjoy eating, and what they can actually be consistent with. Based on that, I designed a diet that I knew Brian could stick to. And this part is important. Brian liked the food and genuinely looked forward to eating it. It was different from what Dwayne ate during his transformation, and it was different from what I ate during mine, but it worked for Brian. Here's what Brian ate, along with the calories and macros. For breakfast, Brian had eggs, bacon, vegetables, and coffee. He ate 3 scrambled eggs with 3 strips of bacon, cooked in 1 tablespoon of butter. He then added a fist-sized portion of spinach or cabbage, cooked with an additional tablespoon of butter or coconut oil. Alongside that, he had 1 cup of coffee with 2 tablespoons of coconut oil, 1 tablespoon of butter, and stevia to sweeten it, commonly known as bulletproof coffee. This breakfast totaled about 760 calories with 76 grams of fat, 32 grams of protein, and 4 grams of net carbs. It was a high-fat, moderate protein, low-carb breakfast because Brian was eating keto. Brian loved the eggs and bacon and looked forward to that meal every day, although he wasn't the biggest fan of bulletproof coffee. We chose this approach because Brian had high blood sugar, which indicated insulin resistance. That meant his body had been exposed to insulin so frequently, mainly from sugar and carbohydrate intake, that it no longer responded properly to it. Since insulin helps move sugar out of the bloodstream, sugar was being left circulating instead. Rather than continuing to rely on a fuel system that wasn't working well, we'll use a different one that the body is designed to use but rarely does. That fuel system is fat, in the form of ketones. The key advantage here is that ketones do not require insulin to be used for energy in the same way that sugar does. This allowed Brian to fuel his body without constantly spiking insulin while also giving his system a break so insulin sensitivity could improve over time. Think of it like this. Your body has 2 engines, a gas engine and an electric engine. You've been using the gas engine non-stop and it starts to sputter, so you switch to the electric engine while the gas engine gets repaired. That's exactly what we did. The diet was therefore high in fat, moderate in protein, and low in carbohydrates. For lunch, Brian had a few variations. He would either have half an avocado with about 3 ounces of peanuts or other nuts, or he would eat around 5 ounces of nuts if avocado wasn't available. Along with that, he ate 2 baked chicken leg quarters with the skin on, plus stir-fried vegetables such as cabbage, bok choy, broccoli, eggplant, or green beans. The vegetables were sauteed in olive oil or coconut oil, and he added a tablespoon of Parmesan cheese for extra flavor. This lunch came out to roughly 1,430 calories with 103 grams of fat, 82 grams of protein, and 12 grams of net carbs. It was a very filling meal, and we deliberately kept the skin on the chicken to increase fat intake. It's also important to understand that too much protein can interfere with ketosis, not because protein is bad, but because excess protein can be converted into glucose, which reduces ketone production. The body will always choose the path of least resistance when it comes to energy, and it's easier to get energy from carbohydrates and protein than from fat. So by strategically limiting carbs and protein, we encourage the body to break down fat for fuel. Stored body fat is literally stored energy, designed to be used in times of scarcity. And let's be honest, when was the last time you were actually in a famine? Keto essentially simulates a famine while still allowing you to eat. For dinner, Brian ate about 150 grams or roughly 5 ounces of mashed cauliflower, along with 6 ounces of ground beef, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, and about 1.5 ounces of cheddar cheese. He added lettuce, a slice of tomato, and a slice of onion, placing everything on top of the ground beef patty like a burger. This dinner totaled about 770 calories with 62 grams of fat, 44 grams of protein, and 8 grams of net carbs. Across the full day, Brian was eating approximately 2,950 calories. I should note that he did have other food options and would sometimes swap the ground beef for lamb, chicken, or fish. But this setup was his favorite and the one he was most consistent with. Despite what many people might think, this was still a calorie deficit. At 320 pounds, Brian's estimated total daily energy expenditure, TDEE, was around 3,800 calories. That's why he lost about 14 pounds in his first week. No, that wasn't all fat, and some of it was water, but the scale moved immediately, which was incredibly encouraging for him. As time went on, we made strategic adjustments to the diet because we knew that his metabolism would adapt. One of the first changes was removing the butter from his coffee. He also reduced his lunch from 2 leg quarters to 1, and we moved the cheddar cheese from dinner to breakfast. Over time, Brian started feeling less hungry. This is one of the major differences with keto compared to other eating approaches because it naturally suppresses appetite. I tell my clients not to fight that appetite suppression because people are prescribed pharmaceuticals to suppress their appetite. And here it was happening naturally, so we leaned into it. Eventually, Brian eliminated dinner altogether, not because I forced him to, but because he simply wasn't hungry. Since breakfast was his favorite meal, I encouraged him to keep the meal he enjoyed the most and remove the one he cared about least. Consistency always wins. Some of you might be wondering about protein intake and muscle maintenance, especially if you've heard me recommend to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of your goal weight. And that's there to support muscle maintenance during a calorie deficit. In a ketogenic state, muscle loss risk is lower than people assume at the same calorie deficit because ketones themselves are very muscle sparing. This doesn't mean that protein isn't important. It just means that ketones significantly help with the job. That's why it was so important for Brian to actually be in ketosis and not just believe that he was. To confirm this, we use urinalysis strips periodically. You pee on the strip, it changes color, and that tells you whether ketones are present. Using this approach, Brian lost 70 pounds in about 12 weeks. Around that point, though, his weight loss started to slow and eventually stopped. He understandably was frustrated. So we implemented a 3-part plateau busting strategy. First, we took a 2-week break. Brian came off keto, ate carbs, increased his calories, and gave his hormones and metabolism a break. He didn't like the idea and was worried about regaining weight, but he trusted the process. He did gain about 5 to 10 pounds, but short-term scale fluctuations are far less important than restoring metabolic function. After those 2 weeks, we returned to keto at a higher calorie level and then gradually reduced intake over time while listening to his appetite and biofeedback. That approach allowed him to lose the remaining weight over the next 2 months. Brian kept the weight off for years. In fact, he sent me a picture 3 years later at the same weight. 3 years is significant because it's a standard used to determine whether weight loss was truly successful, and about 95% of people regain all or more of the weight they lose within that time frame. Brian didn't eat keto forever. He simply didn't go back to eating in a massive calorie surplus. He understood his maintenance calories, adjusted his intake accordingly, and avoided the habits that got him 100 pounds overweight in the first place. Most people fail because they starve themselves, damage their metabolism, and have no transition plan, and return to old habits. So keto doesn't destroy your metabolism when it's used properly. In fact, it can help maintain it, but only if you know how to transition while using it and how to come out of it afterwards. Brian's diet was a major part of his success, but he could not have lost 99 pounds in 5 months without his training. In the next video, I'll break down exactly what his workouts look like and how we paired them with his nutrition strategy to get the result you saw. If you want to understand the full system, make sure you're subscribed because part 2 is where everything comes together.